Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast with your hosts Laz Michaelides and Felipe Amorim. Welcome back, guys. Felipe, how you doing, man?
How you doing, Laz? I'm okay. How's everyone doing? Yeah, man. Had a great couple of days. Actually 3 amazing days. Went to Paris for a day to see a couple of friends of mine whom I haven't seen in years. And then I went to the O2 Arena for 2 consecutive days to see John Fogerty and Elton John. And it was John Fogerty's birthday on his gig and Elton John's last gig ever in London because apparently he's retiring.
Did you just sleep in the seat you were in? I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah.
No, I booked a hotel, so I became a tourist in my own town.
It's always nice because you can kind of you can turn off, can't you? Because when you book a hotel in somewhere you live, you can kind of be like, well, I know home's just over there, but and this is where I normally gig, but I'm in a fucking hotel. It's like,
exactly.
I'm a tourist now.
You know what I mean? They have a proper holiday, how's life in the country?
It's fine. It's not too bad at all. We've had lovely weather recently. I got loads of fields outside in our back. Well, like our garden links on to like 15 to 20 farmers' fields. And this year they decided to grow rapeseed instead of barley, which do you know it's the bright yellow one.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to see all the colours here. But isn't that just so funny? Like, the guy.
That's not very rock and roll.
The guy in the city's like, yeah, and I was in Paris for a day and I saw John Fogerty and Elton John. How's country life, Laz? It's great. The farmer has planted a different kind of seed this year.
Complete different pace, but we're still rocking, right?
You caught me off guard with that question, how's the country? And I looked around and I thought, shit, what can I say that's interesting? And I thought, actually, do you know what, that's not interesting, is it? But anyway, let's get on something that is interesting. We're going to do another album today. And the album we are doing is Eat 'Em and Smile by David Lee Roth. I'm going to give you the quick album details and I'm going to hand over to Felipe. So the name of the album is Eat 'Em and Smile by artist David Lee Roth, formerly of Van Halen, released in July 1986 and recorded across America in New York, Berkeley and Tijuana. The last 2 cities are both in California. The length of the album is 31 minutes. The genre associated with it predominantly is glam metal, which we'll have to look into after. The label was Warner and the producer was Ted Templeman. So I'll hand it over to Felipe, but I'll start off with a question. Felipe, why did you choose this album for this episode?
Right, for a very simple question. I might be slightly obsessed with drums. You might have noticed
really?
That. I mean,
just a bit?
Yeah, just a little bit. So probably, it's hard to say that, but probably my favorite drummer is a guy called Greg Bissonette, who is the drummer in this album. He's like everyone's drummer, really. He worked with loads of artists from jazz to rock and roll. And he's currently touring with Ringo Starr and Zoe Starr Band. You check the guy's CV, he played with everyone, and he's a really, really cool drummer and really cool guy.
He's the guy who played for Spinal Tap, right?
Exactly. He's Skippy Scuffleton. I think that's the name. That's his name with Spinal. He's the only surviving drummer of Spinal Tap.
Because the others all died from combustion, didn't they, or something?
Something like that, or choked in their own vomit. Yeah, but he survived, apparently.
You can't dust for fingerprints on vomit, can you?
You can't, no. Basically, yeah. So he's the only surviving drummer from Spinal Tap. He's such an amazing character, great drummer. And obviously, I follow everything he does. And I'm not into this genre at all. So heavy rock in general, I'm more into classic rock and rock and roll. And heavy rock is something that I'm discovering through this show and through our conversations and whatever people recommend me. And I knew a couple of songs from the album. I knew the videos, which are like proper 80s. And obviously, I'm familiar with David Lee Roth. But when I started researching everything that Greg Bissonette did, and I bumped into this album, and I was like blown away. That is a phenomenal rock album by all means. And I think it's difficult to actually put this album into the category that usually people associated it with, because you said glam rock, right? And I'll tell you why I find this album. Yeah, glam metal.
Glam metal. That's
Yes.
not what I didn't choose that. That's what I've seen it associated with. It's on the Wikipedia article, and others have said it, which I found interesting. Because I didn't. I thought it was way more towards rock than metal.
Well,
But we can
exactly.
get
Yeah.
to that later. Yeah,
Yeah,
carry
yeah.
on.
Well, I think, well, glam metal, glam rock, or whatever. Some people call it hair metal.
Yeah,
You know, and I think those genres are usually defined more by the way the bands look than the music. Obviously, there's loads of music
yeah.
similarities, but there's a lot of, at that point in time, all the bands were trying to look a certain way. You know, it's all about the hair and the way they dress, and it's all like they dress louder than they sound. Isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's yeah, it's super cool. I mean, I like it. I like the vibe. It looks a bit. I mean, when you look at it now, it looks a bit old, doesn't it? Like, doesn't look
Well,
cool. This,
it's funny.
at the
We were
same time.
watching. Me and my wife were watching some Pantera videos yesterday, and as you guys know, Pantera are a very very heavy metal band. And but before they became a heavy metal band and released their debut album Cowboys from Hell, they were a glam metal band. And there's footage and videos and photos of them dressed up in the tight spandex with long hair, perms, makeup
So
on. And can you just imagine? I mean, we know what we know of Pantera and how heavy they are and how aggressive they look. But 5 years earlier, they were dressing up just like people in Motley Crue and Poison, those kind of bands. But yeah, image was a big part of it, wasn't it? Hair, makeup, the outfits, bright colors, just looking the part and basically looking like a rock star, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And David Lee Roth did a couple of interviews at the time about it, and he wanted to make it clear that he was in charge of everything in terms of like, because he wasn't a member of Van Halen anymore. That's his project, and let's face it, he had the time and the money to do it. So he wanted everything to go his way, and he had total control over the way the videos would look and the way the band would dress, and there was a concept. But he said a couple of things about the genre and what he was trying to bring to it, and he actually said uh, that he was taking the music very seriously, because people, he said it was a misconception that people think that, oh, those guys are just, they don't take it seriously, they're just having fun dressing like,
Yeah,
the way they dress is kind of really it's intentionally funny, and
yeah.
I say, if you dress like that, you're probably not taking your music seriously. I said, no, we take the music very seriously. And he said, this is not kids stuff, so that's not for kids, it's
Well,
like proper
I think
grown up.
something Well, something important to mention quickly is that he's actually part of the band slash album that supposedly invented glam metal. Van Halen's debut album, Van Halen
Yeah.
in 1978, we did an episode on it a while back now, maybe a few months. Um, that album kick-started the glam metal movement because what you had is you had heavy metal music, chugging distorted guitars, shredding guitar solos, a heavy drum and bass rhythm section. You had that meeting lovely melodies, vocal harmonies, anthemic choruses, and the way they dressed as well. So David Lee Roth was already a staple character in glam metal as a whole because he was one of the guys that pioneered and innovated it. And I think it's really interesting what you said about him saying this is not kids stuff anymore. This is big boys stuff, and I think that would go a long way to explain the band he's chosen because you mentioned Greg Bissonette, but the band is a star-studded lineup of three members who are arguably, maybe not anymore because they're all older now, obviously, but arguably at this time were the best players of their instruments in the world. And I'm not talking including guys who spend 8 hours a day in their bedroom tapping guitars. We're talking about the professionals, the guys who have been playing for all the names and doing this and that. So, as Felipe mentioned, you've got Greg Bissonette on drums, who played for Ringo Starr's All Star Band and Spinal Tap, among a variety of other artists. You've got Billy Sheehan on bass, who played for Mr. Big, Talus, and more recently he's played for the Winery Dogs. And you've got Steve Vai on guitar, who played for Alcatraz, and more importantly to me, who had just come from playing with Frank Zappa. And just like, if you want to know how talented some of these guys are, all you need to know, do you know, we'll put the video on the show notes, is Steve Vai's audition process to get into the Frank Zappa band,
All
because
right.
Frank Zappa was a master technical musician and a composer, and he knew what he wanted in a band member. Yeah, I'll put the video in there. Basically, it's quite funny. Zappa says to him, "Right, I want you to play a solo using this scale," and Vai goes, "Okay." He goes, "Okay, now play it, but avoid all of the minor notes." And he goes, "Right, shit, okay." He goes, "Great, now play it, but don't use this finger." And he goes, and he goes, and he says one more thing. He says, "Okay, now play it, but augment all the flats." And Vi goes, "I can't do it." And Frank Zappa goes, "Oh, really? Well, I hear Linda Ronstadt's looking for a new guitarist then." For those who don't know, Linda Ronstadt was like your middle of the road pop artist. Because
All
Steve
right.
Vai couldn't do one of these audition things. He was like, "Well, why don't you go and play for the pop star?" But seriously, like I said, I'll put that video in the show notes. But all of those gentlemen are monster players at what they do. You've mentioned Greg Bissonette. I've studied Billy Sheehan's stuff because obviously I'm a bass player, and I know Steve Vai, what he's done from the Frank Zappa I've listened to. And with you just having said that David Lee Roth was like, "This is big boy stuff," it kind of just clicked. I was like, right, that makes sense
Yeah,
now.
and I think he had to prove he was a rock star in his own right. He wasn't like, oh, that guy from Van Halen. Also, if you come from a band with such fantastic musicians like the Van Halen brothers, right? Because they were like out of this world in terms of playing and being creative.
Yep.
So how do you top that? Because you want to prove something, you want to prove you are better than your original band or whatever.
There are very
Uh,
few people you can go to who are
yeah,
better than
yeah,
Van Halen
exactly.
in guitar.
And some people, or most guitar players I know consider Steve Vai the best guitar player ever. I
Mhm.
don't. I find really hard to consider any musician the best ever. But there's a reason
Yeah,
why so many people consider him the best, because
yeah.
he can play stuff that no one else can. So he's just an absolute uh, star. Having said that, I mean, with after talking about Greg Bissonette and Steve Vai, I think Billy Sheehan is the star of the album. Really,
Interesting. That's
I
really
just
go on.
because shredding on guitar is kind of commonplace in rock music.
Mm,
Although Vai could do it and still can do it better than anyone else.
yeah.
And heavy, loud drumming and all that stuff. You've seen that before, but that level of bass playing, the fact that Billy Sheehan doubles some of the guitar phrases. I mean, it's not that easy to follow Steve Vai. Right? So
Yeah.
if you do all that stuff on the bass, at the same level as the guitar, and to play those amazing bass lines and still groove, he's one of the few guys in the business who can do it. I think the idea behind the lineup, and I think, and to be honest, the best thing about the album is the lineup, is the fact that you not only have a great singer, but he picked not some of the best guys in the business, but the best guys in the
All of
business.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, the session, a proper hired guns, guys who could be working with anyone. And he wanted them to sound like a band, and they all sound like they're having a great time all the time. And if you look at the videos, they clearly enjoying themselves, because they had the freedom. Again, we keep talking about rock and roll being freedom in music. So yeah, so they had the freedom to play whatever they wanted to in a certain way. So you got some catchy choruses, melodic like 80s stuff, but then the guitar sometimes is so unpredictable. The phrasing and all that shredding that happens throughout the album.
Yeah.
Some of those things, they come out of the blue. You're not
Yeah.
expecting a drum fill or bass fill, something like that, and just they simply happen at some point, and it's just it blows your mind every single time. So I think
Yeah.
yeah, the lineup is the best thing about the album, even more than the songs, which are all great in my opinion. But the lineup is just what can you say about them? I think they
I
were
think,
bold and unpredictable, and they definitely
yeah, no,
challenged
I agree with that.
limitations of that genre.
Yeah, well, and further because they pushed into other genres, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think from the start, I'll be honest. I'll tell you my thoughts. I don't want to come across negative, but I wouldn't say I liked the album. I wouldn't go and listen to it again. But what you can undoubtedly appreciate that, and that's just personal taste. That's me, Um, there is a level of technicality, and sometimes you sit there and wonder, is it necessary? Is this, as we call it before, when we talk in the prog episodes, we call
Yeah,
it wankiness because that's what you call it. It's like, instead of
yeah,
playing music, he's just wanking on his guitar. You do wonder sometimes if it is all necessary. But I thought, I don't know, there's some songs where I felt, okay, it's just gone over the edge for me, a bit too wanky. But most of the songs, I thought it was really delicately done. I thought you had flashes of guitar brilliance in like a really fast and well played riff, then followed by a sweep like and that, like you said, Billy Sheehan doubles it, and you're just
yeah,
like, hold on, where did that come from? But when I heard it for the first time and I got to the end, I wasn't overly impressed because I didn't necessarily enjoy how the album sounded to me. Because, like I said, I thought, well, is this just a bit too technical for the sake of it? And I went into there thinking, well, this is like David Lee Roth is a guy with lots of money who maybe can't write songs well enough, and so he's hired the best guys to make his songs sound good. But I've listened to this album, I think, 5 times this week, and each listen got better and better because I felt like I started to understand more what he was going for,
yeah,
and that was trying to perfect a level of musicianship that he might not necessarily have had before, and take a simple genre. We say, I sit there and I say glam metal is a simple genre, but arguably, some of the best metal guitarists played glam. People like
yeah,
Randy Rhoads, who played for Ozzy Osbourne, arguably the best metal guitarist ever. So I'm not saying glam's easy, but that because of the mainstream success that glam metal was having in the mid '80s onwards, or from the early '80s onwards, it's hard to be taken seriously, as you said at the start of the episode, with the looks, with the
yeah,
songs, with the power ballads, with the hair, with the makeup. And as it went on and on, I noticed two things. One, um, David Lee Roth wanted to be taken seriously, and two, David Lee Roth was not just a man paying for his rubbish songs to be recorded. He was as integral to the album as they were, I think.
that
His
is
his
really,
song
really true. Yeah,
his songwriting was really good, and it's just I normally, if I listen to an album and I don't like it, I'll kind of be like, okay, that's it, it is what it is. I'm happy I've listened to it, but not for me. And I still now, if you say to me, do you like the album, I'd probably still say, it's okay. But they got better and better each time I listened to it, and that's because I'm mainly a music guy. Mainly I focus on the instruments before the lyrics or the vocals.
yeah,
But as I started paying more attention to the vocals, you hear what David Lee Roth brings,
yeah.
and it's almost like I wish I hadn't have known that the musicians playing on the album were on it, because I wonder then if I'd have just sort of been like, oh shit, that's a bit technical for a David Lee Roth album without knowing it's Steve Vai. But
Yeah,
yeah, what am I trying to say? That David Lee Roth brought more than just songs to this album. He
yeah.
brought a level of performance that I believe matched the others. Maybe not technically, maybe didn't do something as technical on the vocals as Billy Sheehan did on the bass, but it still feels like he did.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe if the vocals are not that technical, maybe that means it's more how can I put it? It's more human sometimes,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, and it communicates. And you being the front man, the most important thing is to be able to communicate with people, really, to deliver a message, even if the message is like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, which seems to be in this scenario. That again about the band, there's one thing he says about them that I think is the best way to describe those musicians. He said they both book learning and street smart. That's a really, really cool way of defining a
Yes.
musician, because we know there's loads of academic guys, the book learning guys. So they learn everything from the music books and they understand all the theory behind it, but they're not street smart. They can't just jump on stage and
Yeah.
improvise with the band. And you have a lineup in which every instrumentalist can play anything, and they had like an endless vocabulary of musical ideas to serve the
Yeah.
lead singer. And I think they got it right. I have my favorite songs in the album, but in terms of performing flawlessly, they did it in every single track. So
Yeah.
you can argue about, oh, maybe this is not my kind of music, or maybe this song is not as great as the other one, but they played extremely well in every single track, every single
every song.
bar.
Yeah.
And one interesting thing about it, we keep going back to the fact that nowadays people record bar by bar and they overproduce stuff. They don't actually play like a band.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to hear this from an interview by Steve Vai, but he actually said this was the most organic record I've ever made.
Wow.
Interesting, isn't it? After playing with Zappa, after and he made his own albums after this, and they all phenomenal. Greg Bissonette played in some of them,
Oh, really?
And yeah. So you would think that Steve Vai have done impressive things and he's got an amazing career, but to say that this was the most organic album, it really means something with a guy with a resume like him, isn't it?
Yeah. And I suppose with what we said about Van Halen and their debut album, organic might not be the word you would think to associate with it because it sounds polished and produced, isn't it? But if I remember correctly, Van Halen, the album, that was also done like as a band, wasn't it? Recorded.
Yeah, I think so. I think they
wasn't
did.
it?
Yeah, pretty much like
So that just comes down to the production then, isn't it? That's a
So
great
maybe-
job of the production.
Maybe it was Lee Roth's idea. So he maybe turned to Steve Vai. I don't want you to record bar by bar. I don't want you to, overdub a lot of shit. I just wanted you to go and play.
Yeah.
And they played like a band and they sound like a band having a good time.
That's exactly what I got a sentence like that in my monologue. Yeah, it's great. One really interesting thing, and again, something that I was very surprised to read, they, all of them, I don't know if that's factually correct, but all of them have a songwriting credit.
Yeah.
Or at least there's a song that was written by Vai, Roth, and Sheehan. Billy Sheehan brought one song from his other band, Talus. There's David Lee Roth and Sheehan writing songs together. I just found it quite unusual that David Lee Roth, being the main man, would, in a sense, allow or have his music tampered with and touched by others. But then again, if you're going to have people come and touch your music, it's going to be those guys, isn't it?
Exactly. Also, if you have those guys, why not, have the best of them in the album? Yeah. Let them be creative. Let them. So basically, it's a band album. It's not a lead singer kind of solo album. Not really. It's got his name. The clever thing is to keep your name on the album cover and make it as your solo career if you want to be in charge, and also if you have big name like he had at the time. Also, apparently it was his decision to leave Van Halen, so he probably knew what he wanted, and I think he wanted to be bigger than them in a certain way. And I think it was worth the effort and the attempt of doing something, because I think it's really hard to compare. It's really hard to say that what Van Halen was doing at the time without him is, better or worse than this. It's just complete different things.
Yeah.
And I think he took a step in a slightly different direction than Van Halen, although he kept the essence of the style.
Yeah. From what I've heard, I haven't listened to the album 5150, which is the album that he did. I think that's the album he did before he left Van Halen. 1985.
But I think he was by that time replaced by.
So am I wrong? So was Sammy Hagar in Van Halen for that album?
I think, yeah.
My point is that you have a check if you want. My point is that I've read people compare these two albums because it's the album that Van Halen released that was so maybe it was Sammy Hagar then, but. People were saying that it's not quite up to Van Halen level, but one song that is on that album, I think, is Jump, isn't it? That famous Van Halen song with the keyboard sound. And I thought there was some keyboards on Eat 'Em and Smile, but it did feel more like old Van Halen.
Oh, no, that's Jump. So that's with Hagar, yeah.
It was Hagar,
that's the one, that's what includes Jump. I'm not that familiar with the whole Van Halen discography, so yeah.
So I just found it interesting that this album did feel more hard rock and more heavy rock than I don't know what you want to call it, synth rock. You know, you think of that song by Van Halen, Jump. Again, guys, any song we mention in this episode will be on the playlist in the show notes, so you can have a listen along whilst we talk. If we mention a song, you go and have a listen to it, so you're sort of keeping up with what we're saying. But Jump is a very keyboard heavy song, and I found that although there were keyboards on this album, it definitely had a heavier rock, old school rock feel to it, didn't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think, and again, I think this album reminds me more of Van Halen's first album
I completely agree.
than, for instance, the song Jump is
Yeah.
way more into pop music than, although it's got impressive drums and guitar, etc. But maybe this album is more rock than what Van Halen was doing with Sam Hagar. It's difficult. Again, I'm not a big fan of those comparisons in the end, because I think when a band splits up, when you have someone going solo and releasing a different album with a different band, if you look into the positive side of things, it's like, well, now we got two great bands. How cool is that? Exactly. Out of one band, he got two great bands. That's how I look into things, and I think it's amazing that he did that and did his own thing before his band turned into shit, because that sometimes happens when people are not happy to work together again. So what are the odds of them producing a great album if they hate each other? It might happen. It has happened in some cases, but it could have been a disaster for him to just continue with Van Halen. So why not doing his own thing? So I like what they did without him, and I like what he did without them.
He took hold of his career, didn't he? He grabbed it and said, I've made the decision of how I'm going to go forward with this.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Getting into the songs, is there any particular songs you want to talk about? Any aspects?
Yeah, there are some songs. I mean, I could talk about all of them, but I want to mention the fact that
this album? Do you really love this album? Is it one of your favorites?
Yes. Well, one of my favorites. It's a big statement because oh man, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I could come up with a top 10 list. That's something for us to try one day in the show. I don't know.
We'll do it.
But amongst the albums, there are not the kind of rock that I listen to is one of the best. You know what I mean? Like, I don't listen to glam rock or whatever that is. I don't care that much about that genre. And I think there's great stuff in it. It's just not my thing. But I think in that kind of genre, no one has done anything better than this album. That's my opinion. So,
that's a good point. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Because of everything that we mentioned. Yeah,
they've taken all the standout characteristics of glam metal, and they've just stuck them all on steroids and taken them up to 11, haven't they?
Exactly. It's basically like, okay, everyone is doing this as kind of as a joke. I'm going to pick that joke and turn into something serious. Like, that's grown-up stuff.
This glam goes to 11.
Yeah. So if I need to mention the songs, right, there's a few covers in the album, right?
There are, yes.
I want to talk about the most unpredictable ones. So you got Tobacco Road, which it's a blues folk song, like from the 60s, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, by a gentleman called John Loudermilk. Yeah,
there's a million versions of this song. I've played the song live with some blues bands, and there's a million versions of it. It's a really cool take on blues music, because it's got some elements of blues chord progressions and stuff. If you listen to the original, actually, you should put the link in there because it's super cool.
We'll put it in the playlist.
Yeah, the original recording of that one.
What's the artist? Just so I get
the artist. I got his name here somewhere. I forgot. Where's the name of the artist? You can't. We need to have this.
I've got the songs written by John Loudermilk.
Yes, that's him. Yeah,
that's him. Yeah. I said that. Yeah, all right, that'll be in the playlist. Yeah,
and I think it was released in 1960. So if we're wrong about a thing or two, just go out and Google it.
No, I'll find it. Don't worry. Don't worry, listeners.
So find it. Put on the link. Yeah. So this is a really old song, and they just obviously didn't play as an old blues folk song. They turned into something else.
It's really modernized,
and it doesn't sound to me like they really trying hard to take it away from the essence of the song, because they kept it short.
Yeah.
There's a really aggressive guitar on it, but so it's nothing like the acoustic original stuff, but it's not a long, they didn't do an extended version of it. All the parts are pretty much the same.
Well, can we come back to songs? Because just on that
Yeah,
point, I want to tell you something that I forgot to mention that I really enjoyed about the album, and that is that one problem with getting musicians like this on an album and giving them freedom to sort of do what they want, and I'll say it, it's the dreaded S word, solos. And that might mean, and that's good. And what you find a lot is that they go on and on and on, and you
yeah,
have a 2 minute guitar solo followed by a 1 minute bass solo followed by a 1 minute drum solo. All the songs here are so short. I
yeah,
loved it.
yeah,
None of them, and I talked about the wankiness, and I talked about is it sometimes too technical for its own sake, but it never tried to be that. In the short 3 minute songs, you literally have only time for a verse, a chorus, a verse, a chorus, crazy flashy guitar solo with maybe a 30-second bass solo at the end, verse, chorus. It's like it
yeah.
was just a normal song structure.
It is, and exactly, and the solos. I mean, if you want to shred, please don't do it for too long. I think that's the philosophy, right? If because I'm not a big fan of those 5 minute guitar solos with a million notes, but if that happens for 30 seconds and leaves you with that feeling of, oh, maybe I want a
Yeah,
little bit more of this, so you got to wait for the next song, the next
good
solo.
point.
So I think they did a great job of keeping the instrumental parts
Mm.
short enough to be enjoyable,
It just
and
worked well with the
yeah,
songs.
and
That's
with
all it
enough notes to impress you.
is. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Anyway, Matt,
maybe
sorry,
just
you were saying about the songs. Let's go back to the
yeah,
songs.
yeah. So back to talking about shredding. If you listen to track 7 and 8, Elephant Gun and Big Trouble,
Oh yeah,
Big Trouble is a slow and groovy song, but the guitar solo is insane.
I found it
Whilst
quite deep purpley, like
oh
funky but
yeah,
heaviness, isn't it?
exactly, it's a bit more funky, and it's different than it. Whilst Elephant Gun is fast paced, everyone shreds into song.
Yeah,
Everyone,
bass
drums,
solo
bass,
was
guitar.
brilliant in
It's
that
like
one.
it's
Yeah,
insane. It's a show off song, and they did it well
yeah,
again
but
because they kept it short.
yeah, but it's a
Uh,
show-off song only when they get to the solos because the rest of it is a good song. The chorus is great, the verse is great. I thought it was brilliant that one. I really enjoyed what's it called, Elephant Gun. Yeah,
yeah, Elephant Gun. Yeah, if you so it's more like if then you have like track 9, Bump and Grind, which is the lyrics and everything's typical 80s,
yeah,
whilst you going crazy, that has a fantastic typical 80s video as well as
yeah,
those cheesy keyboards and but some cool bass and guitar unisons, so that's
yeah. I
what
noticed
surprised me in the song.
the
you
bass
know
was playing harmonics in it, and it had a little slap thing.
yeah,
So for listeners who don't know, a harmonic is when you find a sweet spot on a guitar or bass string where you place your finger gently on top of the string and you pluck it, and the note will ring out, and you can remove your finger. And because it's been plucked in the perfect position, there's like an even amount of wobble either side. I can't really explain it. You
oh,
just watch
that's a good
it.
explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a
And
good
so the note
explanation.
carries on, and he does a whole solo like that, which is it's like, and they sound very airy, very like that. And he does a whole solo of it, and then suddenly it's like he starts slapping them, and it's just
Yeah,
great. Yeah, very technical.
yeah, yeah, some of the techniques that Bill Sheehan and Steve Vai came up with and showed off, that
Yeah,
album. Those techniques are not. You're not going to find them in other
no,
records. You're not going
you're
to
not.
find them played by any other musicians,
I
really.
thought I thought "Going
Uh,
Crazy" was the most Van Halen-esque song on there.
good,
Very
good
kind of
point. And
easy,
it's
easy tune
yeah,
with
and
the
it's
chorus.
probably that one and Bump and Grind are the most 80s
Agreed,
kind of
agreed.
glam
Yeah,
rock songs in the album, in my
yeah.
opinion. So yeah, one interesting one is Ladies Night in Buffalo,
Oh, I
which
love that one.
is funky. That is funky and has a lot more space.
It's the first word I wrote. Funky. Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Can I go on?
Mhm. Yeah, it's another collaboration by Steve Vai and Dave Lee Roth. So, but there's a lot. I just think there's a lot more space. So it's like track 4 in the album. They've been shredding for a while.
Yeah.
They leave some room for you to just dance and enjoy. I like that one.
I
And it
think
comes in a good point in the album.
I agree. Yeah. I found it almost a bit jazz fusiony.
Yeah.
There's a guitarist called Lee Ritenour who's got a song called "Fly by Night," and I studied it. We did it at
Oh,
music
it's super
university.
cool.
and it just really reminded me of this, just elements. Do you know what? Half of that could be the space, because again, if you put more guitars in there, it's heavy metal or rock. If you put less guitars and more chords, it's jazz, you know. But the fact that there was that nice balance between them, that's maybe what gave me that sort of jazz fusion idea. Um, a point you just made. What did you say? Yeah. So a point I've got is that despite the sometimes over the top, and I'm not talking about this album, I'm talking about these musicians, despite the sometimes over the top wankiness that these musicians can sometimes produce, and musicians of this caliber can produce, one thing you always have to give them credit for is that they always know how much or how little to play behind when someone else is doing their thing.
Yeah.
My favorite quote in music is, "It's not the notes you play, it's the space you leave." My favorite ever quote, the most important quote that was ever spoken to me in my music playing career, because when you've got the world of music at your fingertips, and I'm sorry, I'm making that shape because that's the shape of my bass guitar
Yeah.
neck, like that. You know, for you it's this, isn't it? Like everywhere.
Yeah.
But when you've got the world of music and every note at your fingertips, you've got a plethora of ideas, and you're sat there saying, "Oh, I could do this. Look, I could do that. You know, what if I slap? What if I play chords? What if I play faster? What if I play more notes?" And sometimes the best thing to do is to just not play. You know it as well as a drummer. And I
Yes,
think
well, exactly.
in one of the songs, the ending of Elephant Gun, this
Yeah.
is the note. This is what made me make the note. That's a heavy metal song, very technical, solos galore, shredding. But at the end, the last minute or so, it just has this beautiful balance where Billy Sheehan does a bass solo and there's no guitar behind it. And then I think Steve,
Yeah.
or vice versa, but then Steve Vai does a solo and there's no bass, or there's limited bass, or is it drums?
Yeah.
Anyway, you listen to the end of Elephant Gun and you know what I mean. It's just, it can be good, and it's brilliant. He's got Steve Vai playing, but if all Steve Vai does on that album is shred, what's the point?
Yeah.
You need Steve Vai who knows how to interact with other musicians.
They all give each other like
Yes.
a space to shine, you know, like
Yeah.
that's your moment, you do your thing, I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of respect there. And it's interesting to notice that it's a rare occasion where hired guns like them get paid to play more, you know.
Yeah.
You're getting paid to overplay sometimes, which is not really what most producers would tend to do.
That's what their solo albums are for.
Yeah, exactly. But they happen to be doing this in this album. It's amazing. I want to talk about the first song, Yankee Rose. It starts as a guitar and vocal conversation.
Yes.
And that's probably one of the best parts of the album. Because you have a 4 on the floor. For those who don't know, it's when the bass drum, the kick drum plays to like once per beat, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the 4 on the floor going on, which is very simple, very basic. It just keeps the beat. So it makes you start to, you know, dance along with the song. So, okay, cool. I know what they're going for. And then right away you have David Lee Roth speaking and Steve Vai doing the same sounds on his guitar. So from the very first seconds of the album, they kind of letting you know what the album's all about. It's like, we have amazing musicians here and we're going to have fun, you know.
Do you remember when we did Electric Ladyland by Jimi Hendrix? There's a song on there, isn't he, where he has the conversation with the guitar.
Yeah.
It's almost like listening to a child trying to learn the first words. I'm pretty sure I said it back in that video, but there's a video of a father watching a baseball game with his son, and the father's saying, "Oh, didn't he do a good throw?" And the kid goes, he's trying to talk.
Yeah.
I love that you have this. It's obviously not, Steve Vai's not trying to play the same notes that David Lee Roth's saying, but he's making the guitar. He's giving the guitar personality of its own, and when David Lee Roth's talking, he's answering back with it, and it's just
So, and before playing any riff or any solo, he's making the guitar speak. So it's like, let's talk first, and then I'm going to start playing, you know, music.
And then there's a part where David Lee Roth says something about a woman, like, "Oh, she looks mighty fine," and on the guitar he goes, "Wow." Like,
yeah, but it doesn't. The interesting thing for me about the songs, like it has a typical 80s kind of chorus, catchy chorus, vocal harmonies and stuff. But the bridge is completely unpredictable. It goes like half tempo kind of vibe, and it's moody. It's not the same aggressive vibe as the rest of the song. So really unpredictable. Was the first single from the album. And there's an interesting thing that I found about it, which I'm not sure how accurate it is. I don't know. I'm going to say anyway, because I find it's an amazing story. That was the 100th anniversary of the Statue of Liberty, and the song is a tribute to the statue. So I read that as well. There's a line, she's a vision from coast to coast. So
coast to coast.
It's not talking about a real lady. He's talking about a statue of
Liberty.
Lady Liberty. Yeah. So it's super cool, right? And the song also features in the game Grand Theft Auto GTA, which is the which about stealing cars, and it's a typical gangster game, isn't it? And I love it. I played that game. I don't know which version of it, but I don't follow the rules in that game. I just I think kick people in the street and just run away from the police instead of doing the actual missions. But one of the games, I think it's Vice City. I don't know which one is that one, because I haven't heard the song in the game. So it's on the radio, on the rock radio of that game. So super cool. Okay, again, that's not my favorite song. I think it's a great opening track. They got it right to put it first. My favorite song has got to be Shy Boy.
Agreed.
Is it? Yeah. First of all, I want to say that's one of the most epic drum intros ever. Not rock music, not like one of the most epic drum intros ever.
He really sets he really sets the field, doesn't he? He gets
and it's a relentless like double kick groove all the way. So Greg Bissonette,
like metal.
He just skips it like all the way, like the whole song, double kick, non-stop. And it's mental, and it's just like smashing the crash cymbals on the offbeats.
Yeah.
And if you look at that guy playing, he plays it with no effort. You look at him, it's just like, this is easy.
Is he technically fantastic, Greg Bissonette?
He's technically amazing. He's Steve Vai's favorite drummer. That says something.
That says something.
Yeah.
What did you think of the song "I'm Easy"? Because that's I tell you, as soon as I was about a minute in, and the first thing I thought was Stevie Ray Vaughan. Really gives off that kind of country blues, southern grit, effect. I love the horns and the brass band on it.
Yeah, well, a common element, I think, amongst all the musicians in the album, all of them, is that they were all into big band music, so big band jazz music. They all like that.
A lot of those guys are those really top musos.
And Greg Bissonette started out as a jazz drummer. In jazz. Yeah, he played with Maynard Ferguson in a big band, and he collected jazz albums. His dad was a drummer who introduced him to jazz music from an early age, and he says in his YouTube channel, I think, I sent you the link, so please
I watched it. Yeah, it was really good. I'll put it on the show notes as well.
So he mentions the fact that everyone in the band knew a lot about music and not about history. They knew what was going on with music in the world, and they knew about the history of every music genre. And all of them enjoyed big band music. That's why they have those big band-esque arrangements in the album. It happens in a few songs. Well, and I think "I'm Easy" is a third.
No. I was just going to say they're very small installments of big band music until the last song, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It happened. Yeah, the last song. Yeah, we're going to talk about it because "I'm Easy" is the third track in the album. Is my third favorite. So the first being "Shy Boy," as I said. So I think the fact that it's jazzy and bluesy, and it's got, in my opinion, the most melodic guitar solo in the album, and it's really, really short.
Yeah,
I love it. Now, I'll tell you which one is my second favorite, which is the last one, That's Life.
Oh, did I
Uh,
spoil it? I'm so sorry.
no, exactly, because that's we're talking about that. So That's Life is well, it was famous, made famous by Sinatra, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they all loved it, and I think they were talking about that song, and David Lee Roth asked Greg Bissonette if he knew how to play that song because he wanted to put in the album. So yeah, I've played in the big band, etc. So they all like that stuff. They're not taking the piss of that kind of music.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not a joke, and I find quite bold to put a song like that in a rock album.
Yeah.
It can go terribly wrong
Yeah. No, it can.
unless you can swing.
Yeah. Well, I found it interesting because as the song begins, you've got Steve Vai doing like some guitar solo on his guitar, obviously. And I thought, I don't know if the whole song is going to be like a rock band trying to make That's Life sound rocky. I'm not sure I'm going to enjoy this. But as the guitar slowly moves into the first verse, the rockiness almost like instantly. It's like, here's how many tracks are there on the album? Like 8 or 9.
10
10.
songs.
So it's like the first 9 songs we've had a like an influx, an absolute punch of heavy rock music with
Yeah.
complicated, wanky music being played, and then suddenly we get to the start of the 10th song. You get that guitar, Steve Vai doing his guitar thing, but then it kind of fades out, and we're transported to a totally new and I was going to say a new style of music, but it's not because you can still hear that it's the same 4 musicians. But we just transported away from the rock and into the big band jazz, and
Yeah.
it's played fantastically by all of them. And I have to say that one thing I did not peg David Lee Roth for was being a jazz singer, and it wasn't. He didn't sing jazz there, he still had his rock voice. But my God, the vocals, man.
It's so, oh yeah, because we're talking so much about the musicians. We got to give him the credit for leading a band like that
Yeah,
and just performing amazing vocals on top of all those layers of
yeah,
great instrumental parts. And I think his expression, his emotion, and his sounds. The fact that he said, I'm taking this seriously. Yeah, he sounds like he's joking at some points when he wants to,
mm,
and he sounds like he is a master of his craft when he wants to. And
yeah,
and
yeah.
and there's yeah. So one thing you can say about the album is it's not predictable. That's the thing.
Not at all. No, just so many twists and turns. Like we said,
Yeah.
blues, rock and roll, glam rock, glam metal, big band jazz at the end. It's like
Yeah.
twists and
He-
turns all the way, but it
I,
still has a distinctive sound to it. Do you think?
Yeah, I think that kind of genre, maybe, I mean, I'm probably coming to this conclusion right now. That kind of genre sounds repetitive and boring because people don't swing. I'm not saying they can't swing, but they deliberately don't swing. It's all very straight, like,
You're talking about like glam metal, glam rock.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah. No one
yeah.
swings.
I
It's just
agree. Yeah.
like, and someone playing loads of notes on top of it, and and high pitched vocals and vocal harmonies on the choruses, all that stuff. But when they swing like a big band at the end of the album, I think, I think they couldn't have ended it in a better way.
There's a certain, like I said, you've been hit with 9 songs worth of incredible musicianship, incredible rock musicianship, and you kind of think, you get to the end of the 9th song, and if you haven't looked at the track listing, you kind of like, there's 1 song left. What on earth could they do more that's going to make this album even better? And then
Yeah,
they hit you with a cover of That's Life. Like,
yeah,
it's brilliant. Isn't it?
yeah. I would never think of that song for an album
So
like this.
unpredictable. That's what you said at the
Yeah,
start. It's an unpredictable album.
yeah. So I think, So my 3 favorites are those: Shy Boy, That's Life, and I'm Easy. Do you
Ooh.
have any other favorites?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed. So I think Shy Boy's my favorite. I also really enjoyed Ladies' Night in Buffalo. Elephant Gun, Big Trouble, and Yankee Rose I really liked, and That's Life was a really good cover, I thought.
Yeah,
Um, so hard, man, because I'm sat here, and I'm sat here of the opinion, which I've written down, which is that I didn't overly get on with the album, and I do wonder if it's just certain sections of certain songs where I just felt maybe this was a little too over the top, because I'm looking down the list now and I'm sat here thinking, and I go, well, just like I said to you, yeah, Shy Boy's my favourite. Yeah, Ladies Night in Buffalo is brilliant as well. Elephant Gun, Big Trouble, and Yankee Rose too. And That's
Oh
Life's
yeah.
good as well. Do you know what I mean? So it's like they're all good songs, and no one, there's no rule that has to say, oh well, you need to decide whether you like an album or not. But I don't know what to say, man. I'm just confused, like, in a really good way. In a really good
Well,
way.
I think
I think
we've
I
done so
don't.
many different albums, you know.
Well, I think what it is, and this is really kind of, I suppose, arrogant and pretentious of me, is I don't. I think I don't want to like the album because I don't normally like this kind of music where people are showing off for the sake of it. But as I said at the start of the episode, 9 times out of 10, they got the balance of just not showing off. The difference between showing off and not showing off. They got it just right. So I think I don't want to like the album because I don't like pretentious music that is only there to play as many notes as you can. But yet when I listen to it, you can't help but sort of smile when Billy Sheehan does a bass fill. You're like, oh yeah, that was good, wasn't it?
Eat them and smile.
It's a good album. It's a really good album. Yeah. Do you have
So
anything more to say?
no, I just want to hear a monologue.
Oh, okay, here we go. All right then, yeah. Um, so it's a really fun album to listen to. It sounds like a band who are having a lot of fun and enjoying playing the music that they are creating. And with some shared songwriting credits, it feels like a treat to the listener. I think they've accomplished and written across a variety of styles to a really good level. You've got glam, funk, jazz, blues, rock and roll, and big band, but each song does have a personality and a cohesiveness to the other songs, which tells you it's all part of a collective group. I can't say I love the album. If I'm being honest, when I hear some songs, I'd rather just go and listen to some Van Halen or some heavy metal, but it's a treat and a pleasure to hear all of these musicians play together. There are a lot of flashy moments of brilliance from the musicians, and you'd assume that of all the people on this album, that David Lee Roth's musicality and musicianship would fall short. Not because he's not good, but because the others are virtuosos in their instruments. But his melodies, vocal technique, and execution really keeps the focus of the music where it belongs, despite the incredible talents of Greg Bissonette, Steve Vai, and Billy Sheehan. The attention should be on David Lee Roth.
Amazing. Yeah,
Because I think,
totally agree. I agree with that. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's like I said before, repeating myself, it's easy to get carried away with the musicianship and let the vocals just be a footnote because
Yeah.
guitarists are going to see this and go Steve Vai, bassists are going to see this and go Billy Sheehan, drummers are going to see it and go Greg Bissonette. And I don't think, David Lee Roth, I'm not a singer, so I don't know, but he isn't of the, I'd say he's just the level below the Freddie Mercurys, the Ronnie James Dios, isn't he? Unless
Yeah.
I'm wrong.
Well, he's
I
not. He
feel he's just
wasn't famous for his technique, maybe for his style.
that's probably what I mean. So I feel like the others are all at the top of their game, and David Lee Roth is maybe one step lower. But when you hear the finished product of the album, it doesn't feel like he's one step lower.
Well,
He
he
feels like
had
part of that band.
he had the self-confidence that a band leader has to have. He
Yeah,
had the ideas that a frontman has to have. Like if you want to be in charge of a project like that, you got to know where you're going. And he clearly knew, and he wanted to prove he was he could rock without Van Halen, and I believe he did.
that's a really good point. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that the album was a statement of his own talent and his own ability of directing a band. And yeah, amazing. I mean, if I do recommend a couple of things. One is if you need to listen to this album if you're learning an instrument, or if you
yeah,
want to, what I mean, if you're learning how to play guitar, bass, or drums, you've got to listen to the album. And the other thing is something, maybe I should have said this before in other shows. Every time I listen to the albums to prepare for the show, I listen to them on headphones and on a speaker. So I have my Roland speaker here. I don't get paid to promote them. I'm just saying that that's for my electric drums. So it's kind of a monitor for my drums. And so it's like if you have high quality speakers or even for an amp or something that you can listen to it as if you're in a concert, just do it, and then listen to the album again on headphones with your eyes closed, listen to every detail in the album. Do that with any album you like, and you're gonna have a complete different experience when comparing these two ways of listening to an album. I don't know if you do that, Laz, but I do that. I like it.
Yeah, well, especially when I listen to a new album, especially when one of my favorite bands put a new album out, I have to immerse myself. I have to close the blinds, turn the lights off. My dad always told me that when he first listened to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, he got his speakers, because back then you didn't have headphones, so he got his speakers, and they got dual speakers, and he put one either side of his head, lay down on the pillow, turn the lights off, and hit play. And I just can't think of anything else that more sonically, resembles how they wanted you to listen to Dark Side of the Moon, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, let's call it a day here. I don't know if you know this. I don't think you do, because I know I do the admin of this show. Today is the 50th episode.
Oh, wow.
We've done 50 episodes, man.
Congratulations, brother.
Congratulations, man. Yeah, exactly. 50 episodes. I mean, that seems like a relatively small number in terms of, well, how many vinyls have you got? 50. How many gigs have you been to? 50. How many pounds have you got? 50. It's like, okay, it's just 50. But episodes, man, think all the research we do for each episode and all the time and effort we put into sort of getting them out there to you guys. 50 episodes, man. That's a great job. So congratulations to us.
I mean, I think,
so
thanks for everyone who's been listening to it, because this is a show this is a podcast that wasn't meant to happen. I guess I think you came up with the idea, so hats off to you for encouraging me to do this. I was reluctant for many reasons. Most of all because I don't think my English is up to the standards for a podcast. But anyway, you encouraged me to do it, and this came out of conversations we had in a car on tour, talking about the albums we wanted each other to listen to.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's basically what we're doing. We're recommending albums to people, or trying to make them remember how great those albums are. And also just remember that if you're having a shit day, just listen to a good album, start to finish. Stop what you're doing, put your headphones on, listen to a great album, start to finish, a great rock album. That's going to make your day better, whatever your problem is.
Music is the healer of the soul. I genuinely believe that. There's so many times. There's times, where I'm not ashamed to admit that I've had mental health problems in the past few years, and there's been particular songs that I've listened to where all your problems just go away because, on a personal note to myself, from myself, there's times where you listen to a song and you think, with so much beauty in the world, what have I got to feel sad about? And, obviously it is justified to feel sad and feel depressed. A lot of people go through it, men, women alike, young men. It's quite a big topic at the moment. But to have music there and to have one or two songs or an album that you go to whenever you're feeling a bit down, a bit low, and you just think, do you know what? Like, for all the shit in my life, for everything that's going wrong, for everything I'm feeling upset about, I can always rely on this band or this album to make me feel better.
Yeah.
I think that's such a wonderful thing to have, and to know that it will always be there. Unless there's some mass Blade Runner type power down where we lose all the files in the world, then you're always going to have it. Especially vinyl collectors. See all these vinyls? That's what they're for. In case we have a mass power out, we got vinyls to make sure we never lose a song. But yeah, man, you're right. Music is a great healer, and as Felipe said, we do this show because we love music and it's brought so much joy in life, professionally and personally as well. And thank you guys for joining us on this journey. 50 episodes. I can't quite believe that we're there. Congratulations, Felipe, and here's to 100.
Let's keep going. I don't want to stop. I'm having a great time.
Me too,
and I hope.
Yeah.
And apparently, a few people are having a great time because they had a few thousands of downloads, which is more than I ever expected to get from the show. Not saying that we know, putting our hearts and souls into this, but sometimes you never know if people are going to like it. So for all of you guys who've been downloading and listening to it and streaming, thank you very much. And if you don't know where to find us, I'm going to ask you this time, Laz. Where can you find the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast?
On the internet.
Anywhere on the internet?
I'm gonna try to do a Felipe and say yes, just use Google. But no, seriously, we are on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. If you're seeing us now, we're on YouTube. We are at the Long Live RNR Pod. We bringing this to you for free. We're an independent podcast. We do it because of our love for the music. This is our 50th episode, so we'd like something from you as a 50th episode present to us. Could you guys please go and give us a review? Whether you're on Apple Podcast or Spotify, one review where you give us a little 5-star and a couple of words means we go up the algorithms. People see us more often. Instead of typing in long live rock and we come up, people just type in rock and roll and we come up. People type in long live and we come up. One review can make all the difference. So we appreciate you guys tuning in every week or every 2 weeks to listen to us. But it would mean the world to us if you could just give us a short review. And it's going to help us out so much. So thank you once again, guys, for joining us.
Thank you, and keep on rocking, everyone.
And as usual, happy 50th episode and long live rock and roll.